this one is huge. Boredom. The second that you feel awkward, lonely, unmotivated, your hands will reach for your mobile phone. You see it everywhere. Restaurants, walking down the street, everywhere where people have just got to stand. If you keep numbing boredom instead of listening to it, you can miss one of the most useful emotional signals that you have. There is a 2014 set of experiments where they put people into a room with an electric shock button. Some people decided to electrocute themselves instead of just staring at a wall, sitting there with their own thoughts. Most people today are overstimulated but overconnected. We have constant access to entertainment, information, conversation, and generally just dopamine. We're treating boredom like it's an actual problem that we have to pursue and eliminate, when often boredom is actually a signal that needs interpreting. And I'm going to give you 5 practical ways that I feel are going to be most helpful in dealing with boredom. On today's episode, I want to talk about something that I'm pretty confident almost everybody, these days anyway, avoids like the plague. Today, I want to talk about boredom. It's that uncomfortable, restless, agitating feeling that makes people reach for their phones, turn on their TV, scroll on social media, snack for no reason, message somebody that they probably shouldn't be messaging, or just fill every second of silence with noise. And the truth is, most people don't actually hate being busy like they claim, like they complain to you, I'm just so busy at the moment. That's not really the thing that they hate the most. What they really hate is being still long enough to hear themselves think. Because boredom doesn't just feel empty, it feels exposing. It removes distraction, it removes stimulation, it feels exposing, and it removes escape. And when all that disappears, you're left with just you, your thoughts, your feelings, your truth, your dissatisfactions, your uncertainty, your unmet needs, your lack of direction, your emotional discomfort. And this is why boredom is so important. Because what most of us call boredom is actually the beginning of the first stage of behavioral change, which is awareness. And awareness is where change starts. So today, I want to talk about why boredom feels so bad for so many people, what the research is actually saying, because I think that's quite important, why we've become addicted to avoiding boredom, and most importantly, what opportunities could exist for us if we just let ourselves be bored and we stop running from it. Because boredom is not always a problem. Most of the time, it's actually an invitation. And as always, with everything I do, we endeavor to be honest. If not with other people, at least with ourselves. So let's be honest. Most people today are overstimulated but overconnected. We have constant access to entertainment, information, conversation, validation, distraction, noise, and generally just dopamine. Even now, if you get a little bit bored, you can sit and you can have a full-blown, fairly intellectual conversation with AI, which is wild because it's not real. I actually was talking something through with AI the other day, just to get his opinion. And then when I was telling a friend about it, I actually called AI he. And I was like, wait, it's not a person. What's going on here? It's a whole nother podcast. We'll step away from that as I go off on a massive tangent. But really what I'm getting at is that at any moment of the day, we can escape boredom, or at least the discomfort of boredom, within about 3 seconds. Just stop a minute and think about it. The second that you feel awkward, lonely, unmotivated, uncertain, emotionally flat, or just mentally restless in some way, your hands almost automatically, almost unknowingly reach for your mobile phone. Not because you need anything. And this is the key part. You don't actually need anything. You're not thinking, oh my gosh, I need to read that message or read that email. You just pick it up and hope that there's something to do. And if the mobile phone companies and the whatever apps are on your phone have done their job right, then there'll always be a notification, there'll always be something to pursue, look into, and then once you're distracted. And that's something that's worth bearing in mind, that very clever people are spending a lot of money hiring lots of other clever people to do loads of research to make sure that we use these products. Not only do we use our phones, we use the apps, we use, consume, distract. Therefore, boredom feels like something that we just don't have to experience anymore. It feels like we've solved a problem. But as I said, boredom isn't actually a problem. Not always. Because we don't reach for the phone because we need something. We reach for the phone because we don't want to feel nothing. We just don't want to feel nothing. We don't want to identify, I suppose, with that feeling of not having anything to do. I mean, it's not a difficult spiral to think, I've got a day off work today. Oh, and I've got no one to see. Oh, and I've got nothing to do. Oh, and oh, wait a minute, I'm on Instagram now, and oh, look what so-and-so's doing with their day off. Oh, look what so-and-so's doing today. Oh, yeah, they're doing that thing. Why wasn't I invited to that? Look at all those thought processes that come from just not being bored. Instead of just sitting there and thinking, what should I do? You're there judging yourself because you feel like you've got nothing to do. Very different mindset, but really human and really easy to get to. Because we don't want to feel nothing, but worse still, we don't want to feel what's underneath that nothing, or what we think might be underneath that nothing. Again, it's all fear. We don't actually know there's anything under that nothing. And this is why, all of this is why boredom is such a threat to the modern person. Because boredom removes your coping mechanisms. And if your life is begun to become built on avoiding your own internal world, then boredom can actually feel completely unbearable. You'll hear a lot of people say, I just hate being bored. But what they might often mean is, I don't know how to be with myself without distraction, which is a really different way of saying the same thing in a weird way. At the very least, it's a very different conversation if you wanted to talk about it. Because boredom isn't always a lack of things to do. Sometimes it's a lack of meaning, presence, purpose, engagement, or just emotional tolerance. Just the ability to tolerate an uncomfortable emotion, a what if question, maybe I should question, or whatever it is that's going on. Whatever it is that's going on. Now, again, I have my issues with the word should. Complete sidebar. Let's stay away from it because otherwise I'll go off on one and we will never get this podcast episode done. Because sometimes boredom isn't saying there's nothing here. Sometimes it's saying what you're doing isn't connecting with who you are. Now, you might say, wow, we're reading into this too much, aren't we? I don't think we are. Listen to that whole episode. Decide for yourself at the end. It's all good. I got some research this week. We're going to get there in the end. Because all of it matters, I promise you. Because if you keep numbing boredom instead of listening to it, you can miss one of the most useful emotional signals that you have. Now, I said that I'm going to talk about some research, and I went on a bit of a deep dive. I'm kind of obsessive with this sort of stuff, and I'm like that, so you don't have to be. But there is a well-known 2014 set of experiments where they put people into a room and they asked them to quietly entertain themselves just using their own thoughts. And they also provided them with an electric shock button. And they just said, you can press it anytime you want if you get too bored. And here's the wild part. Some people actually decided that it would be better to electrocute themselves. Obviously, it's not fatal, but they decided to electrocute themselves, which I can't imagine was that comfortable, instead of sitting there with their own thoughts. Instead of thinking out a problem, instead of staring at a wall, instead of doing anything with their mind and just being alone with their own thoughts, instead of just sitting there and not doing anything, which is not really a problem. You're not in danger, you're not in pain. You just sat there and boredom perhaps creeps in. But instead of feeling that, they're like, I wonder what it feels like if I just electrocute myself. Let's see what that feels like, shall we? That'd be fun. And I can't imagine it was that fun, to be honest. But they preferred it, essentially, to doing nothing, which is, to me, wild. Really is wild. And is a clear indication of how uncomfortable, just how uncomfortable people find that stillness, that not doing anything. Let's put aside boredom for a minute, because that potentially is an assumption. I'm talking about just the stillness, just the ability to sit and do nothing at all. I prefer to electrocute myself instead. Now think about that. In the context of modern life, we don't need to shock ourselves anymore. But instead, we've got TikTok, we've got Instagram, YouTube, online shopping, snacks. It's much easier to go and eat some biscuits, right? Gambling apps, messaging, just sending a good old-fashioned message, email, WhatsApp, whatever. But then we've also got endless scrolling. So many different things we can do, just moving between everything, just generally scrolling, not really looking for anything, not really needing anything. We're just doing it to solve what we believe is a problem, which is boredom. But then what we're really doing is just looking for endless noise, stimulation, and something to pay attention to. And what that's done, in a sense, is giving the impression that we have made avoidance frictionless. There's also a lot of research that shows that when people feel bored, they're more likely to reach for their phones. And I think you see it everywhere, right? You see it in doctor's surgeries. You see it in restaurants. You see it in pubs. You see it when people are walking down the street. You see it when people are waiting for buses. You see it everywhere where people have just got to stand. Here's a really good one as well. The toilet. When's the last time that you went to the bathroom, the toilet, whatever you want to call it, wherever we are in the world, and you sat on the loo and you didn't have your phone? When was the last time that you did that? And I mean intentionally, not because you left it downstairs. I mean because you decided not to take your phone. I remember when I was a kid, I could probably recite the back of the air freshener to you. I could probably tell you the article of the woman magazine that was in my mum used to read that was in the toilet. I could probably tell you the back of the toilet roll wrappers. I could totally tell you all of that because that's what I did. I sat and read that stuff. But now we scroll on our phone and we're getting all of those opinions, all of those things that social media do where they perhaps make us feel a bit insecure, where they perhaps make us feel like we're not doing enough, perhaps that we're failing. You go into the bathroom, you come out feeling like your life's rubbish and that you're a failure. Wow, what have we done here? We just went to the loo. That's all we did. Because the wild part about that study is not only are we more likely to reach for our mobile phones when we feel bored or fatigued, but actually what was reported was afterwards, we didn't actually feel any less bored. We actually felt more bored. We actually felt more bored and more fatigued. So it doesn't actually solve the problem that we think that we have in the first place, which is also a bit crazy because that really is massive. Because what that means is the things that we use to escape boredom can actually intensify that boredom. So what is actually happening here? I think the first issue, the first challenge, the first mindset shift perhaps is that we're treating boredom like it's an actual problem that we have to pursue and eliminate, when often boredom is actually a signal that needs interpreting. Because there's also research that's closely linked to saying that boredom is actually helpful for self-regulation. And there are close ties between boredom and self-regulation. Your ability to direct your self-focus, make choices, and engage generally with your own life is actually helped by boredom. People who struggle with self-regulation and cognitive flexibility tend to be more boredom prone. That must mean, in essence, that boredom is not essentially just about your environment. It's also your relationship with your own attention. And that's where this can become powerful. Because if boredom reveals how weak your relationship is with your own mind, then boredom can also be the place where you can strengthen it. Couple of people feeling seen. They're like, wait a minute, Johnny, why are you calling me weak for? Just back up a minute. Just calm it down. And I'm sorry. This is quite a confronting thing, isn't it? Because I think all of us have experienced boredom, will experience boredom, and we don't really want to look into what that means because we are very well practiced at making boredom mean something to do with us, our self-worth, who we are, and what we're not, more importantly. Because really, I suppose this is the part of the podcast that I want people to really hear. Boredom itself is not the enemy. What damages people is what people choose to do to avoid that boredom. Because if you can't tolerate that stillness, you will become vulnerable to anything that offers instant stimulation. And that's how people end up doom scrolling for 2 hours, emotionally eating, chasing validation, watching things they don't even care about, buying things they don't even need, texting people who are not good for them, and distracting themselves out of alignment. Why? Because boredom creates tension. And for people that haven't built emotional tolerance, they will always look for that quick relief. Now, that sounds really judgy, and I'm not judging. I'm just stating what the research is showing and what I've seen and witnessed within myself and within others. Because this is why boredom is actually a discipline issue. And I hate that too. I don't want it to be a discipline issue. That sounds a bit much to me, but it kind of is. But I don't mean it in the aggressive, gotta work harder sense. I mean it more in the ability to lead yourself. As I've continued to say, self-leadership has got a strange tone to it as a word, but it is the right word. Because what we sometimes do is we allow the external world to direct us like a pinball, and we walk around life or bounce around life like a pinball, just reacting to everything, and we don't really feel like we're making decisions. We don't really know which direction we're going in. We're just sort of reacting to life. There's no leadership, there's no decision making, there's no direction choosing for our life. Therefore, we never feel like we're ever getting where we want to go. And what I'm trying to get to is to say that boredom is not a problem, it's not a reflection on those insecurities, it's actually more of a signal of areas where you can still make improvements or changes or decisions, whichever it is. Because can you stay present enough to hear what your mind is trying to tell you? Can you resist the urge long enough to notice what's missing? Can you sit with that discomfort long enough to turn restlessness into revelation? Because when you can do that, boredom stops being dead space and starts becoming data. So let's get into the heart of the episode. What is this opportunity that can be found in boredom? Well, a lot, if you're willing to stop resisting it. That's got to be the first action, really, is to become less resistant to boredom, less I hate boredom, and more I'm curious about boredom. And I'm going to give you 5 powerful perspectives on what I think could be quite helpful. Number 1 is boredom reveals where your life lacks meaning, because boredom can expose the gaps between what you're doing and actually what matters to you. Because a lot of people are bored, not because their life is empty, but because they repeatedly engage with things that aren't aligned with them. They just don't want to do it. They're not interested. They don't know why they're doing it. They're doing it because they've always done it, which is really not a good reason to keep doing something. Because here's the truth of it. You can be busy all day and still be bored with your life, which kind of means that being busy is not really the answer, right? Maybe that means that being bored is, right? I don't know. It seems to me like a logical conclusion. Because movement doesn't equal meaning. A full calendar doesn't equal a fulfilled life. Sometimes boredom is your inner world saying, this isn't feeding me. This isn't challenging me. This isn't stretching me. This isn't me. And instead of listening to that, people sedate it. They distract themselves from the very signal that could help them change direction. So one opportunity found within boredom is this. It can show you where you're living out your habits instead of your purpose. And let's be honest, that's not a small insight. That can change your relationships, that can change your work, your routines, your identity. That could change your entire future if you let it. Number 2, boredom creates space for self-awareness. To be honest, what I've always seen in most people is that, not always, actually always. What I've always seen in most people is that you don't lack answers. You lack the silence long enough to hear the answers. One thing I always know in every single client I work with is that they always have the answers. They don't come to me because I know what's best for their life. That's ridiculous. They actually know what's best for life, but something's standing in their way of reaching it and understanding it and listening to it, or wanting it to be true, or they're terrified of it. Whichever it is, something is standing in the way and they don't want to see it. They have the answers though. They always do. Any coach, therapist, psychotherapist, mate, whoever it is that tells you what's best for your life, well, they might be being kind, but they're not basing it off of what they know about you. They're basing it off what they feel about them and what they would do. That's often what they say, in fact. This is what I would do if it was me. Because you cannot hear your deepest thoughts in your mind if you're constantly flooded with input, regardless of where it's coming from. You can never properly assess your life if you constantly are consuming. You can't understand yourself if you're constantly reacting all of the time, like that pinball that I spoke about just a minute ago. Because this is the very thing. Boredom strips away that external stimulation and, in a way, forces you inward, which is what people hate. they don't actually like that. But that thing that's bothering you, those answers that you're looking for, that stuck feeling, is found in the boredom. It's found in going inwards. No one else is going to tell you. They'll try. You'll scroll on Instagram and they'll tell you why you're stuck. They'll tell you why you're bored. They'll tell you why boredom's a problem. They'll tell you all of these things. And then they'll sell you something. And you'll probably buy it because you're desperate and you feel like you really want that answer. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I'm not being unkind. This is the place where you come when you're ready to hear the truth. And this is what I believe is the truth based off my own experiences, which I'll probably have again with certain other things, and the things I've seen within my family members, my friends, but most importantly, my clients. All of it, though, is really uncomfortable, but is also where that self-awareness that is key is built. This is where you start asking what I believe is the ultimate when it comes to self-development. Better questions. Why do I always need noise? Why does stillness make me anxious? Why do I keep reaching for distractions? What am I avoiding? What have I not been honest with myself about? That one's tricky because those are not casual questions. They're real questions that come with real answers that you may or may not want to be true, but most likely are. Those are life-changing questions because once you become aware, you're at the start of the journey, whether you're ready or want to or not. You can no longer unknow what is true because truth, even when it's uncomfortable, is always more useful than avoidance. There's a powerlessness that comes with avoidance that people don't realize is caused by that avoidance. They just think they are powerless when actually it is that avoidance to focusing on the challenges, the problems, the things that may be true that you don't want to be true, that is actually causing that powerlessness, which is a key shift when it comes to mindset. Number 3, and I think this one's probably quite commonly known, but boredom can be an enormous gateway to creativity. Very often when I'm trying to do creative stuff, which is a lot of the time, I spend hours and hours and hours trying to get it right, or I get pulled into my perfectionist traits that I can often have, and I need to step away. And it's only when I step away and I do something else, go and play with the dog, go and talk to the kids, go and spend some time with the wife, go and do anything else. Sometimes just sit in the garden, if it's not raining, and just look at the grass. And it's only then do I start to get creative ideas. And I start to think, hang on a minute, I'm looking too deeply into this. What if I just did this? And that's where all the ideas come very often. That's why quite often your most creative time of the day is 3 o'clock in the morning when you've just got up for a wee, and then you lie back in bed and all of a sudden all the answers to life's questions comes flying at you. But you're like, I want to go to sleep. Nope. Because now you're lying in bed. There's a little tinge of boredom, perhaps because you're just trying to get off to sleep. And all of a sudden, all those creative ideas, that stillness is there. And that is a really beautiful place to find what you need. I liken it to like a pond. When you throw a stone in a pond, there's ripples. And you can't see the bottom of the pond because there's loads of ripples in the pond where the stone has gone through. But once that stillness comes, then you can see what's underneath it. Beautiful. The research is actually a little bit more mixed. Some say that boredom can reinvigorate and create creativity, where others say that's not guaranteed. So it's worth saying that, really, because I don't want you to sit there bored for 4 or 5 hours and have no creativity and blame me for that. And say, Johnny, I wasted my day. I didn't get anything done. I spent 3 hours trying to be bored and I didn't have any creativity. And I'll be like, I'm sorry, but I did tell you the research was balanced. Remember that bit? Because I think really it depends on the person, it depends on the context and what they do with that boredom. And that's key, because boredom doesn't just magically make you creative, but boredom can create the conditions for that creativity to emerge. And that's an important distinction, because creativity does need space. It can't feel smothered. It can't feel forced. It has to feel like it's emerging. That's what creativity is. It's a kind of, for me anyway, creativity is a kind of freedom. The freedom to just be creative and try things and make mistakes and use the wrong tools and the wrong colors and the wrong ideas. And then somewhere along the way, you kind of mistakenly find out what you want in a weird kind of way, because ideas rarely come to you when your mind is drowning in noise. Because I found that they come in moments like in the shower, on a walk, or when I'm driving. That's another really big idea. Is I hate it because I can't write the idea down. And then I spend my life trying to work out how to voice note it to my phone while still driving, which is really frustrating. But then, like I said, lying in bed is another big one when you're trying to get off to sleep. Or if you're just staring out a window. If you ever like sat in a waiting room and you're just looking out the window and you start to have these ideas. It's almost like these ideas come when they feel like they're not allowed to come. That's when they sort of turn up and they go, oh, by the way, here's the answer to that really important thing that you want. You're like, oh, man, I haven't got a pen, haven't got my phone. Oh my God, you're sat in a gown somewhere in this hospital. You can't write it down. That's when the idea will come. It comes in them gaps between the stimulation. And why do I think that happens? Well, when you stop consuming, your mind finally gets the chance to produce. And that is the opportunity that I'm talking about. Because many people are consuming at such a high rate, they've forgotten how to generate their own thoughts. We're seeing this a lot with AI. Everything is sounding the same online because people can't be bothered to write their own captions. People can't be bothered to create their own content, and they're using AI to do it. And it's all becoming the same. That creativity feels dead. And that's why when somebody just randomly picks up their phone and goes on a rant, everybody loves it. It's because it's real, it's true. Whether it's polished and perfect or not doesn't really matter. They hear the truth within it. They hear what's real, even if it's just what's real to that person. Because people have forgotten how to generate their own thoughts. They know how to scroll, but not how to think. And again, it's not a judgment. I'm not saying that I'm better than anyone because I don't do that, because I do that. And the truth is, I'm just pointing out what I've watched and observed in a way in which I pray is helpful. Because people know how to scroll, but not how to think. They know how to absorb, but not how to create. They know how to react, but not how to imagine. And that boredom can be the bridge back to that. Number 4, boredom strengthens emotional tolerance. And certainly for me, this one is huge. It really is. Especially when, like me, you care about self-leadership. And I gather that you do too because you're listening to this podcast. Because if you cannot tolerate boredom, you probably will also struggle to tolerate discomfort, uncertainty, delayed gratification, emotional flatness, stillness, and the lack of immediate reward. And those are all things that matter if you want to build a better life. Because that better life that you're looking for is not built through constant stimulation, at least not in my experience. It's built through your ability to stay with things long enough for them to compound. And that means training when you don't feel excited, working when it's repetitive, staying committed when results are slow, sitting through emotional discomfort without sabotaging yourself. It's like, I feel seen. Because boredom is all part of that. So if you can build a healthier relationship with boredom, you can build a healthier relationship with discipline. And discipline is not a punishment. That's why I struggle with that word, because it always sounds like a punishment, a judgment almost. To me, discipline is staying loyal to what matters, even when the moment doesn't feel exciting anymore. That's maturity, that's self-respect, and that is leadership. Very often I heard it said, I can't remember who said it, but I heard it said not long ago, that the people that become the most successful in life are the ones that can last that moments of boredom, because success is boring. There comes a point where it's rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. It can become repetitive, monotonous, and just boring. And if you can outlast that boredom, at some point, success creeps in and you're on to the next stage. And that is what you're looking for. So really that boredom, practicing that boredom is like practicing a skill that absolutely is vital to creating success in anything that you're pursuing. Not just business. I'm talking about a relationship. I'm talking about anything that you're really pursuing. Being a parent, whichever it is. There's lots of being a parent that could be boring. It's also stacks that's really rewarding and stressful. Let's be honest about it. Number 5, boredom is often the doorway to reinvention. And this might be the biggest hidden opportunity. A lot of breakthroughs don't start with excitement. They start with dissatisfaction. They start with, I can't do this. There has to be more than this. This routine feels dead. I'm bored with who I've been. And that's not really a crisis, but it can feel like it. But really, sometimes that's your next level knocking. Because boredom could be a sign that you've outgrown something. It can. It can really be a sign that you've outgrown something. It could be a sign that you've outgrown a role, a pattern, a way of thinking, a social circle, a routine, a version of yourself. And if you're brave enough to interpret that boredom, it can become the beginning of reinvention. Not because boredom feels good, but because boredom very often tells you the truth. So let's get practical. What can we do about this, Johnny? Well, I've got 5 practical ways that I feel are going to be most helpful in dealing with boredom. Number 1, create no input moments. And I think this is one of the best things you can do. Start building short windows in your day where you don't consume anything at all. No phone, no music, no podcast, no scrolling, no TV, no notifications, just space. That could be 10 minutes in the morning, a walk without your phone, driving in silence, sitting with a coffee doing nothing, finishing in the gym and not immediately grabbing your device, or it could just be sitting on the loo with no phone. Try that one, because that one is hard. A lot harder than people think, and you'll realize how conditioned you've become into doing that. I didn't think I did do that. I do that. Did do that. Sometimes do that. And the truth is, at first, no matter what it is that you do, it will feel uncomfortable. And what you have to realize is that that is the point, because what you are doing is rebuilding your tolerance for stillness. And if you can do that consistently, your mind will begin to settle enough for that deeper thought and that deeper insight. Number 2, when you feel bored, ask yourself, what is this trying to tell me? You don't have to do it out loud, to do it in your head, because you could be somewhere public. And if you start saying, what's this trying to tell me? Shouting up at the sky, that could lead to some stuff that's like really not fun. But what this is a powerful reframe. Instead of immediately reacting to boredom, interrogate it. Ask yourself, am I understimulated? Am I emotionally avoiding something? Am I disconnected from meaning? Am I mentally tired? Am I living too repetitively? Am I craving challenge? Am I craving purpose? That question, honestly, can reveal everything. What is boredom trying to tell me? Because once boredom becomes information instead of irritation, you stop fighting it and start learning from it. Number 3, replace escape with expression. When boredom shows up, most people escape. But what if instead you expressed? Instead of scrolling, you write, you journal, you voice note an idea, you plan, reflect, sketch, create content, outline a project, or just sit and think deeply. I once heard about a musician that scored music for movies. I think it's the wife of Jamie Dornan, the actor. And I think I forget her name, and I apologize for that. But she scores music for movies, and she spoke about how people think the moments when she's composing is where all the work happens. And she said, actually, those moments where I just sit and I look out of the window, that's when I'm composing the music. When I actually do it, that's just a formality. But the music gets composed in my mind when I'm sat there looking out the window. I loved that when I heard it, because actually that's a lot of way my creativity comes. It comes when I'm driving, like I say, or it comes when I'm walking the dog with no phone, or on the loo with no phone, whichever. Lot of images of me sat on the loo right now. I need to get away from it. It's not good for anybody. Because boredom often carries unspent energy. And if you don't direct that energy, you'll discharge it through distraction. So train yourself to ask, what can I create from this feeling? And that, I promise you, or at least for me, was a game changer, because some of your best ideas, your clearest thoughts, and most aligned decisions will come from those moments of boredom, and those moments when you didn't immediately decide to numb it and get away from it. Number 4, build a life that requires less distraction to tolerance. This one's a little bit more confronting, if I'm honest. Sometimes the reason you need constant stimulation is because you don't actually like the life that you're leading when it gets quiet. That doesn't mean that your whole life is wrong, but it might mean that there are some things that need your attention. Maybe boredom is exposing your lack of challenge, your lack of growth, your lack of connection, your lack of purpose, or maybe just your lack of truth. And if that is the case, the answer is not find better distractions. The answer is build a life that you don't need distracting from. That is a much more honest solution. Number 5, practice micro boredom to build mental strength. This is something, if I'm honest, you can start immediately. It's really simple. Give yourself little moments in the day where you don't soothe discomfort. Now, I'm not talking about agony. I'm talking about discomfort. And examples of that are standing in a queue without your phone. Sit for 5 minutes before you go to bed with no stimulation at all. Wait in your car for 2 minutes before going into your house. Go for a short walk without anything in your ears. No earpods, no music, no podcast, no nothing, no audiobook. And just leave your phone in another room. These are small acts, but they retrain your nervous system and your attention. You're teaching yourself, I don't have to react to every urge. I can stay with myself. I can tolerate stillness. I'm not controlled by my need for stimulation. That's not just useful for boredom. That's useful for life. But really, here's the deeper truth about boredom. Most people aren't overstimulated because their life is full. They're overstimulated because they're under-practiced at being present. And presence is a skill. Stillness is a skill. Reflection is a skill. Thinking for yourself is a skill. Not reacting to every internal discomfort is a skill. And boredom, when approached properly, can train all of those things. That's why I don't think boredom is something to fear. I think boredom is something to understand, because hidden inside boredom is often clarity, creativity, self-awareness, emotional maturity, honesty, direction, and sometimes even purpose. But you'll never ever access any of that if your first move is always to escape. So if there's one thing that you take from this episode, please let it be this. Not every uncomfortable feeling needs to be removed. Some feelings need to be listened to. And I believe that boredom is one of them. Because boredom may not be telling you that your life is empty. It may be telling you that your attention is fragmented. Your life is misaligned. Your mind is overloaded. Or your soul is asking for something deeper. If you can learn to sit with that instead of sedating it, you might find that boredom isn't the enemy at all. You might find it's one of the most perfect opportunities you've ever been given, one of the most honest opportunities you've ever been given to grow. So next time you feel bored, don't ask yourself, how do I get rid of this? Ask yourself, what might this be trying to show me? That question alone could honestly change your life. So if this episode resonated with you, send it to someone who's always bored. I've got the life audit in the description below. Please check it out. It's completely free and loads of people have found it really, really helpful. In fact, there's been a few life decisions that I've got the blame for. And I'm going to say it's not me. Like, it's the questionnaire, it's the life audit. I know I wrote it, but it's not me. I'm not making anyone do anything. It's just what they decide once they go through it and they answer the questions with honesty. And yeah, there's been some people make some big decisions in their life that affect other people. But this is the point, right? We live our life according to what we think others want us to do instead of what we actually want to do. That conditioning needs to get broken down so we can live our life authentically and with honesty and truth. Thank you very much for listening to the John and Lawrence podcast, and I'll see you next week for another episode.